Hey 1316 students, I've created, or I'm about to create, I'm going to walk you through a review for our test 2, which is 7.1 to 7.7. It'll be fast, and just keep in mind you can start and stop the video as you wish. And before you actually keep going with this video, I would make sure you've got your book out or an ebook. You've got paper, pencil, maybe some sticky notes, maybe flashcards. Maybe you want to go ahead and create some index cards as we go. And so what I'm trying to do is to take the whole chapter 7 and narrow it down to where it's more manageable as you prepare for your test. It's going to start on Tuesday, April 14th. I'm going to be sending you a whole lot of details about that, and this video will be part of that. And so what I've done is I've gone through my book, and I have highlighted information in green highlighter. And that's the information I'm going to suggest that you learn. And I'll talk to you about what to memorize and the stuff that you don't have to memorize. A couple of test details. You're going to have 3 hours for the test process, but that's going to only mean about 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and 15 for the test itself. I'll explain that in the email. You will not be using your cheat sheet, your formula card on this test. We will on test 3, but not on test 2. And I'm going to push you to get a data dump page practiced and ready to do the day of the test. And so you see right here is a data dump page, and all that means is you have a piece of paper, and when you're ready to start the test, then you can start dumping down information like identities, tips, some difference formulas, the half angle, the double angle formulas. And when you do that without looking at notes, you may use this paper during the test. But you can't pre-make this paper. That's cheating. So this is called a data dump page. A lot of this information you'll need in pre-cal and your future classes. That's why the first 2 tests, I don't let you use the formula card or a cheat sheet on this test. Some other things you might want to write down on the data dump page, or when we get to the identities, some of these tips that we talked about in class. The test is it is 20 questions, and that's going to mean about 2 to 3 questions per section. So let's get started. Again, I'm going to go fast, but you can stop the video at any time. So in 7.1, I'm going to draw your attention to page 451. It's going to seem like eons ago when we talked about inverse sine function and the restrictions. And even in class, we would put up on the sideboard restricted portions. That would be something great to put on your data dump page, but you got to make sure you got it memorized first. So today is going to be a quick balance of information to memorize, and then can you do? So here's an example 1. Can you do example 1 without the use of notes or a formula card? You could use your data dump page as long as it's come from memory. And could you do, on the next page, 452, could you do example 2? And could you do example 3? I'm moving on to page 452, and about 3/4 of the way down, 453. And about 3/4 of the way down, we see the inverse cosine function information. You need to have that memorized as well as the restrictions. So I would go pull out your notes from when we were in class. There are some videos, and I'll be showing you more about where those are. And you've got many resources. I've been sending you information about tutoring through our campus. I've been sending you information about BrainFuse, which is a system tutoring. And many of you like to just put in words. You could put in inverse cosine function in YouTube, or you could put it in under Khan Academy or anything like purplemath.com, and then go read and look at what you like the most, what makes the most sense to you, what fits you, and that's what you need to use. I turned to page 454, and now I'm looking at example 5. Could you do something like example 5? You'll notice I'm skipping a lot of problems. You need to focus on the ones that I'm pointing out. You also need to remember, or learn for the first time, inverse tangent and its restrictions. Again, we went over these a lot in class. Pull those notes. And down here at the bottom of the page, 456, could you do, and I hope you haven't been able to see the speaker screen the whole time. But could you do example 7, both parts, A and B? Do you also know how to do example 8 without help and noticing the pieces and parts? And I didn't show you, but up over here above example 7, it's where we were talking about, and I used the word scribble, and we talked about, oh, there it is, domain and range and which way and working inside out. But again, I'm not trying to teach at this point, just trying to point out information you should know for test 2, which happens Tuesday, April 14th. So you need to know these formulas, how these make sense. Again, I'm wanting to teach again, but we've already gone over them in class. Example 8, do you know how to do it? And then that brings us to cosine. Do you know these properties? You've got to have them by memory. On the next page, there are some tangent properties. And then there's an example 11 on page 459. That's all I've got to underline in 7.1. It probably still seems like a lot, but it's better than saying, hey, go memorize all of it. I am narrowing it down. I'm now in section 7.2. I'm on page 464, and I'm at the bottom of that page. Can you do example 2 at the bottom of this page? We did it, because we did it individually and groups, or together and then groups. And then on the bottom of 465, can you do example 3? At the top of 466, I would make sure I knew how to do example 4, and then I know how to do example 5. And that concludes 7.2. I'm scurrying on to 7.3, and I'm on page 470. On 470, notice it solve the equation and give a general formula and be able to list 8 solutions. You need to know how to do that for test 2. The top of page 471, example 3, can you solve this equation with restrictions? I'm moving on to page 473. And in example 7, again, it is a solve, but this time it has a square in it. And I'm finished with 7.3. Looking now at 7.4. You must do memorize. And I think you've already got them memorized, but it wouldn't hurt to memorize them, to data dump them. That this is what my data dump page is going to look like. I memorize the page, and then I dump it right before the test. You can do that before the clock starts, but don't do it with helps. Do it all out of your brain. The Pythagorean identities, those are crucial, and the even-odd identities. We've talked a lot about these in class. These are the basic trig identities. Those need to be in your brain. I'm now at the top of 482. Can you do example 2? At the bottom of 482, can you do example 5? At the top of 483, you need to know how to do example 6. Make sure you put a smiley face on there. And you need to do example 7. It's kind of funny because this is the stuff I would look at during class, and y'all never saw this stuff. Now you get to see my book. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, that's it for 7.4. So moving on to 7.5 and on page 487. This is good information, but specifically you need to have memorized the sum and difference formulas for cosine. We practice those, you've done homework on those, but you need to have them memorized. Or go back and memorize. Been a whole lot going on since we saw each other last. On page 489, there's an example 2. Make sure you know how to do that example. And on this one, another use of the sum and difference formulas, but notice I scribbled it out. So this one's not going to be on the test. But on page 490, you got the sum and difference for sine. You do need to know how to do you need to have these memorized, and you need to know how to do example 3 on page 490. Turning some more pages, and I'm now at the bottom of 492. You've got sine, cosine, and you also have tangent. Make sure you have this one memorized. You already had it memorized or really close to it when we saw each other before. On page 493, on 493, make sure you have example 7, example 8, and example 9. Make sure you know how to do all of those. And I think I've missed something. Hold on just a second. Let me go back and look at the, yep, I forgot to tell you something. Back on 7.4, I highly encourage you to know how to do these that I circled on page 485. 21, 25, 29, and 51. I would know how to do those also. Sorry about going backwards there. That finishes those, 7.4 and 7.5. So now I'm at section 7.6, and I'm at the top of 501. And we're almost done with the memory work, but these, you'll see these come back up in your calculus sequence. I want you to have them memorized. Have these memorized. Again, you can data dump them before the test starts and without using anything to look at, but make sure you know how to do example 1 also. At the bottom of page 504, you need to know half-angle formula. And remember, I know this is in pink, but again, I'm not teaching, but I got to reiterate this. How do we know where to do the plus or whether to use plus or minus? And it's going to be determined by the quadrant where the half angle is located. And make sure that on page 505 you know how to do example 7. And you can probably hear my dogs. On page 511, this is our last part, 7.7, for the test. Notice I have do not memorize anything in 7.7 except for how to do the processes. This actual little clip will be on the test for you to use. You need to know how to use it, as well as this clip here, which is on page 512. I'll have these exact formulas on the test. What you need to know how to do is how to use them. And so, trying to get you as much information that looks like the test as possible, I'm sitting on page 513, and you need to know how to do 23 and 24. And that is it. Again, it may seem like a whole lot, but it's better than looking at you and saying, hey, I hadn't seen you in 3 weeks. Go ahead and just memorize all of chapter 7. No. I really hope you're doing well. I will be sending all of this in a big old email, and you'll see the email and you'll see this at the same time. That concludes what I want to tell you about chapter 7 for test 2 trigonometry review.